June 7, 1992. A warm summer night was settling over Springfield, Missouri. Graduation season had filled the city with excitement. Families were celebrating. Friends were making plans. Teenagers were stepping into the next chapter of their lives. For most people, it was just another peaceful Sunday night. But before the sun rose the next morning, 3 women would vanish without a trace. No signs of a struggle, no ransom note, no witnesses, no answers. More than 3 decades later, investigators are still asking the same terrifying question. How can 3 people disappear from a single house in the middle of a city and leave behind almost nothing? This is the mystery of the Springfield Three. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because every week we uncover the world's most chilling true crime cases, unsolved mysteries, and disappearances that continue to haunt investigators to this day. The story begins with a young woman named Stacy McCall. Stacy was 18 years old, bright, ambitious, and excited about her future. She had just graduated from high school and was enjoying one of the most memorable weekends of her life. Alongside her best friend, Suzie Streeter, she spent the evening celebrating graduation with classmates and friends. The graduation ceremonies had ended. Photographs had been taken. Parents were proud. The future looked endless. Neither Stacy nor Suzie could have imagined that they were living the final hours anyone would ever see them. Suzie Streeter was 19 years old. She had a rebellious personality and a strong independent streak. Friends described her as energetic, outgoing, and fun to be around. She lived with her mother, Sherrill Levitt. Sherrill was 47 years old and worked as a hairdresser. Unlike many unsolved disappearance cases, Sherrill wasn't someone living an isolated lifestyle. She had friends. She had family. She had responsibilities. She had plans for the coming week. There was absolutely no indication that she intended to disappear. On the night of June 6th, Stacy and Suzie attended graduation celebrations around Springfield. Like many graduates, they moved from one gathering to another, spending time with friends and enjoying the freedom that came with finishing high school. At first, they planned to stay at a friend's house. But the arrangements changed. It wasn't unusual. Teenagers often changed plans at the last minute. Eventually, Stacy and Suzie decided to spend the night at Suzie's home on Delmar Street. The house belonged to Suzie and her mother. It was a quiet residential area. Nothing about the neighborhood suggested danger. Sometime after 2 a.m., the 2 young women arrived at the house. Several witnesses later confirmed seeing them earlier. That evening, everything appeared completely normal. The girls were laughing. They were talking about graduation. They were making plans for the next day. Nobody noticed anything suspicious. Nobody reported being followed. Nobody remembered any strange encounters. As far as anyone knew, they simply went home, and then they vanished. The next morning, friends began trying to reach them. At first, nobody was worried. Teenagers often slept late after parties. But as the hours passed, concern started growing. One of Stacy's friends went to the house looking for her. What she discovered would become one of the most discussed crime scenes in American history. The front door was unlocked. Nothing appeared broken. Nothing seemed out of place. Inside the house, there was an eerie sense of normalcy. The women's purses were still there. Their clothing was there. Their personal belongings remained untouched. Cars belonging to both Sherrill and Suzie sat outside. If the women had decided to leave voluntarily, why would they leave behind everything? The answer made no sense. As people entered the home, they noticed another strange detail. The family dog was inside. The animal appeared healthy and unharmed. If a violent struggle had occurred, the dog likely would have reacted. Yet there were no obvious signs that anything unusual had happened. The beds had been slept in. The television remained in place. The furniture looked normal. It was almost as if 3 women had simply evaporated into thin air. Then came another bizarre clue. Near the front porch, someone discovered shattered glass from a light fixture. At first, investigators wondered whether it was connected to the disappearance. Had someone broken the light during an abduction? Had a struggle occurred outside? Unfortunately, the situation became complicated. Before police could properly process the scene, several friends and relatives had already entered the house. Some cleaned up the broken glass. Others moved items around. Without realizing it, they may have destroyed critical evidence. It was an innocent mistake. People didn't immediately understand. They were walking through what might become one of America's most famous unsolved crime scenes. By the time investigators arrived, the scene had already been contaminated, and with that, some of the most important clues may have vanished forever. Police quickly launched an investigation. Missing person reports were filed. Officers searched the neighborhood. Friends and family members were interviewed. But the deeper investigators looked, the stranger the mystery became. There was no indication that any of the women planned to leave town. No bank withdrawals, no letters, no packed luggage, no evidence of preparation. Everything suggested they expected to return home. Yet they never did. As detectives dug into the lives of the 3 women, they discovered something important. Each disappearance case often begins with motive. Someone usually has a reason. Money, revenge, jealousy, obsession. But identifying a motive here proved incredibly difficult. Stacy had no known enemies. Suzie had a complicated past. But nothing that clearly pointed toward a disappearance. Sherrill appeared to be living a relatively normal life. Investigators found themselves facing a disturbing possibility. Perhaps the women had become victims of a random predator. If that was true, the suspect could be almost anyone. Days passed, then weeks. Search teams combed through fields, forests, abandoned buildings, and nearby properties. Volunteers joined the effort. Tips flooded into police departments. The community desperately wanted answers. Yet every promising lead seemed to collapse. One witness claimed to have seen a suspicious van. Another reported strange activity near the neighborhood. Others believed they had spotted one of the missing women in different states. Each lead generated hope. Each lead eventually ended in disappointment. Meanwhile, national media began covering the story. Newspapers printed photographs of the missing women. Television stations broadcast updates. The public became fascinated. 3 women disappearing from a house without obvious evidence felt almost impossible. The mystery captured attention across America. And as attention grew, so did speculation. People developed theories. Some believed a serial killer was responsible. Others suspected someone known to the victims. A few even suggested organized crime involvement. Without evidence, every theory remained exactly that, a theory. Behind the headlines, however, 3 families were living through unimaginable pain. Parents waited by telephones. Friends searched for answers. Every unexpected call created hope. Every passing day increased fear. Months after the disappearance, investigators still had no solid suspects. No confirmed sightings. No physical evidence capable of explaining what happened. Cases like this often grow colder with time. Witness memories fade. Evidence disappears. Leads dry up. Yet detectives refused to give up. They continued interviewing individuals connected to the victims. And eventually, attention began focusing on a man whose name would become deeply connected to the case. His background raised questions. His behavior attracted scrutiny, and some investigators wondered whether he knew more than he admitted. but proving it would be another matter entirely. The deeper police looked into him, the more complicated the investigation became. There were rumors, contradictions, suspicious statements, but there was still no definitive evidence. The case remained trapped between possibility and proof. As years passed, the mystery only grew darker. What exactly happened inside that house during the early morning hours of June 7th? Did the women know their abductor? Were they lured outside? Were they taken by force? Or had investigators overlooked a crucial clue hidden in plain sight? The answer remained frustratingly out of reach, and soon investigators would uncover witness statements that would send the case in an entirely new direction. As investigators continued examining every possible angle, one fact remained impossible to ignore. 3 women had vanished from a house without leaving behind the kind of evidence normally associated with an abduction. No blood. No clear signs of violence. No reliable witnesses. And no confirmed suspect. For law enforcement, it was the kind of case that could consume entire careers. Detectives began revisiting every detail of the victim's final known hours. They retraced Stacy and Suzie's movements throughout graduation night. They interviewed classmates again. They checked timelines repeatedly. If someone had targeted the girls, perhaps the clue existed somewhere within those final celebrations. Dozens of people had interacted with them that evening. Some remembered conversations. Others recalled seeing them leave, but nothing pointed directly toward a kidnapper. Then attention returned to Suzie's personal life. Investigators learned that several months before the disappearance, Suzie had become involved in a situation connected to a criminal case. She was believed to have information related to individuals involved in grave robbing. At first glance, it sounded insignificant, but detectives could not ignore the possibility. Could someone have wanted to silence her? Could she have known something dangerous? The theory attracted attention because it offered a possible motive. Yet, evidence supporting it remained frustratingly thin. No direct connection could be established between that situation and the disappearance. The more investigators searched, the more the case seemed to slip through their fingers. Meanwhile, rumors spread throughout Springfield. Some residents became convinced a serial predator was operating in the area. Others suspected someone close to the victims. The absence of answers created a vacuum that speculation eagerly filled. Years later, people would still debate what happened that night. One reason the mystery endured was because of the strange condition of the house. Experienced investigators often describe crime scenes as telling stories. A broken window tells one story. An overturned room tells another. A trail of blood tells yet another. But the Delmar Street house told almost nothing, and that silence became one of the most disturbing aspects of the case. Detectives considered whether the women might have willingly opened the door. If someone familiar arrived late at night, they would have had little reason to feel threatened. Perhaps a trusted person knocked. Perhaps an emergency was claimed. Perhaps they stepped outside voluntarily. If that happened, it could explain why there were no obvious signs of a struggle. But even that theory raised questions. 3 women leaving together in the middle of the night seemed unusual. And if they did leave voluntarily, why were their purses, money, identification, and vehicles left behind? Nothing fit perfectly. As months turned into years, investigators received thousands of tips. Some sounded credible. Others were clearly false. Each had to be evaluated. Each consumed valuable time and resources. Among the most discussed developments was a witness who claimed to have seen a woman driving a vehicle shortly after the disappearance. According to the account, the driver appeared distressed. Another woman was reportedly in the passenger seat. a man occupied the rear. Some believed one of the missing women might have been inside. But certainty proved impossible. Without physical evidence, the sighting remained just another possibility. The case continued growing colder. Then came one of the most haunting aspects of the investigation. Psychics began contacting families and police. Some claimed to know where the women were. Others insisted they had visions. Maps were drawn. Predictions were made. Locations were searched. None produced answers. For the families, each new claim offered a painful mixture of hope and disappointment. Every possibility suggested the nightmare might finally end. Every dead end reopened old wounds. The emotional toll was enormous. Imagine waking every morning, not knowing whether your loved one is alive or dead. Imagine spending years waiting for a phone call that never comes. That became reality for the families connected to this case. The uncertainty was relentless. In many missing person investigations, families eventually receive answers. The answers may be tragic, but at least they bring closure. The Springfield Three case offered no such mercy. Instead, it left an endless question mark hanging over everyone involved. As the years passed, technology improved. Forensic science advanced, databases expanded. Cold cases around America were solved using methods unavailable in the early 1990s. Many people hoped the Springfield mystery would finally yield answers. Investigators reviewed evidence again. Files were re-examined. Witness statements were revisited. But despite modern tools, the central mystery remained intact. 3 women had disappeared. No one knew where they went. No one knew who took them. And no one knew why. One particularly intriguing lead involved reports connected to a parking garage. Rumors circulated that evidence might exist beneath a structure built after the disappearance. The theory captured public imagination. People wondered whether hidden remains could finally explain the mystery. Yet searches failed to produce conclusive results. Once again, hope faded. The pattern repeated itself over and over. A promising clue emerged. Public interest surged. Investigators followed the lead. Nothing definitive was found. Another possibility vanished. The case became a collection of unanswered questions. And perhaps the most disturbing question of all was this. How could an offender successfully remove 3 people from a house without leaving behind meaningful evidence? Criminal profilers examined that issue carefully. Some suggested the offender was experienced. Others believed luck played a major role. A few argued the crime scene contamination may have destroyed critical clues during the earliest hours. Unfortunately, nobody could travel back in time and preserve the original scene. Whatever evidence existed, that morning may have been altered forever. The longer investigators studied the disappearance, the more extraordinary it appeared. Many abduction cases involve a single victim. Managing one person is difficult enough. 3 victims create far greater risks. More opportunities for resistance. More opportunities for witnesses. More opportunities for mistakes. Yet somehow, whoever was responsible appeared to have succeeded. That reality convinced some experts that the crime was carefully planned. Perhaps the offender understood the victims. Perhaps the offender knew the neighborhood. Perhaps the offender anticipated police procedures. Again, theories existed. Proof did not. As decades passed, the women became symbols of one of America's most baffling unsolved mysteries. New generations discovered the story. Podcasts examined it. Documentaries explored it. Investigative journalists revisited it. Online communities analyzed every known detail. The fascination endured because the mystery felt almost impossible. Many people can understand how one person disappears. 3 disappearing together from the same home is much harder to comprehend. The human mind naturally searches for patterns and explanations. This case stubbornly resists both. Even today, investigators encourage anyone with information to come forward. That request has remained unchanged for decades. Someone may still know something. Someone may have heard a confession. Someone may have noticed suspicious behavior years ago and dismissed it. Cold cases are occasionally solved because a witness finally decides to speak. Authorities have never completely abandoned hope, and neither have the families. For them, the story never truly ended. While the public moved on to other headlines, they continued living with uncertainty. Birthdays came and went. Holidays passed. Years became decades. Still, no answers arrived. No confirmed suspect was charged. No remains were conclusively discovered. No explanation emerged capable of solving the mystery. The house on Delmar Street eventually became more than just a location. It became a symbol. A reminder that even in ordinary neighborhoods, extraordinary mysteries can occur. A reminder that some crimes leave wounds that never fully heal. And a reminder that not every question receives an answer. Today, more than 30 years after that summer night in Springfield, investigators still cannot say with certainty what happened inside that house. Did the women know their abductor? Were they victims of a carefully planned crime? Did a chance encounter turn deadly? Or is there a piece of the puzzle that has yet to be discovered? Nobody knows. What we do know is that on June 7, 1992, 3 women vanished. Stacy McCall, Suzie Streeter, Sherrill Levitt. They left behind their possessions. They left behind their plans. They left behind families who never stopped searching. And they left behind one of the most haunting mysteries in American history. Somewhere, the truth exists, whether it is buried in a forgotten memory, hidden within an overlooked clue, or known only to the person responsible. That truth has survived for decades. The question is whether it will ever be found. Until that day comes the disappearance of the Springfield Three, remains a chilling reminder that sometimes people can vanish without a trace, and the silence they leave behind can echo for generations.